People don't realize they're losing everything until the only thing left is pain. In a world where glamour conceals the truth, Olivia Thompson walked into that glittering night, her heart brimming with a trust she'd soon learn was fatally misplaced, and walked out with its fragile pieces scattered like fallen stars. A lover slaps his pregnant wife. But what happens next is karma in action. The slap came out of nowhere loud. Sharp. Cruel. Olivia didn't even have time to blink. 1 second, she was smiling politely for the cameras, her hand resting protectively on her 7-month belly. The next, her face was stinging, her ears ringing, and every single person in the opulent millionaire's gala had gone utterly silent. Sophia Sterling's hand still hovered in the air, her crimson nails gleaming like predatory talons under the chandelier lights. People gasped. Some covered their mouths in shock. Others quickly raised their phones, their screens lighting up the stunned faces. But no one stepped in. Not a single soul moved to help. Sophia's voice, when she finally spoke, was calm, clear, and coated in a thick layer of poison. I told you to stay out of our lives. Ethan doesn't love you. He never did. You were just convenient. She sneered, her lips curling into a grotesque mockery of a smile. As she looked around, taking in the captivated audience, she declared with chilling confidence, "Let the world know I'm the real woman beside Ethan now." Olivia couldn't breathe. Her hand shook, a tremor starting deep within her. Her baby kicked inside her, a sudden, sharp movement as if reacting to the violence outside. Sophia's words weren't just an insult. They were a knife, one that cut through 8 years of marriage, through every promise whispered in the dark, every moment Olivia had thought was real. She looked around at the sea of wealthy strangers, men in tailored tuxedos, women dripping in diamonds, all staring, some whispering, others smirking as if this was the night's pre-planned entertainment. And Ethan, he just stood there, leaning casually by the bar, drink in hand, as calm as ever, watching her fall apart. It was as if it didn't matter, as if she didn't matter. Olivia tried to hold herself up, her hands pressed against her stomach like a shield. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking, a fragile plea in the vast, suddenly hostile room. "Tell him it's not true. Tell her to stop." But Ethan didn't even blink. He took a slow sip of his whiskey and then turned to Sophia. "You didn't have to hit her," he said, his tone casual, as if they were discussing spilled wine. Not a brutal slap delivered in front of the entire elite press. Then he looked at Olivia. No love, no guilt, just a chilling boredom etched on his handsome face. "You shouldn't have come tonight." Those 5 words hit harder than the slap. Her knees weakened, threatening to buckle. Someone nearby let out a stifled laugh. Another whispered, "That's the pregnant wife, right?" How pathetic. The shame flooded her, hot and fast, more potent than the tears threatening to spill. Her whole body trembled, but she wouldn't cry. Not here, not in front of them, but deep inside, something cracked, a foundational part of her that she knew, with a horrifying certainty, would never be fixed again. As Sophia stepped closer, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You married him for money, sweetheart, but you forgot the rich always come back to their own kind." Olivia blinked. Through the blur of lights and noise, the cameras were still flashing, relentlessly capturing her humiliation. The pain wasn't just in her heart anymore. It was now public property, her agony gone viral in real time. She could hear one reporter mutter, "This will be front page gold by morning." She wanted to scream, not because of the slap, not even because of Sophia, but because deep down, a terrible, sickening truth uncoiled. She had seen the signs, the late nights, the secret texts, the sudden, Inexplicable change in Ethan's touch. The way he made her feel invisible even when they were in a room full of people. But she had buried it all, pushed it down because she loved him, because she thought carrying his child would bring them closer, because she had believed in the facade of their life. Now, all of that was dust. Her hands wrapped around her belly protectively. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, a tiny, insistent reminder that she wasn't alone, that this wasn't the end. Not yet. Ethan turned his back on her without a second glance. Just like that, he walked away with Sophia on his arm, not even pretending to care about the crowd, the burgeoning scandal, or his pregnant wife, left standing alone in designer heels and unshed tears. The ballroom felt colder, the air heavier. The music never resumed. People slowly returned to their champagne and gossip. But the mood had irrevocably changed. Olivia wasn't just a guest anymore. She was the night scandal, the fallen queen, the woman too blind to see her own crown being stolen from her head. She tried to move, but her legs were heavy, weighted down by despair. Her heart was heavier still. Someone brushed past her, whispering, "She should have known better." Another voice replied, laced with disdain, "You can't trust gold diggers. They always lose in the end." But they didn't know her. They didn't know the sacrifices she had made, the lonely silences she had endured. They didn't see her at doctor visits alone, or the way she lovingly decorated the nursery by herself while Ethan was supposedly busy building his Empyrean empire. She now suspected, built on lies. For a moment, Olivia's knees buckled, and she had to grab the edge of a nearby table laden with untouched canapes to keep from collapsing. Her vision blurred, her breath shallow with the crushing weight of shame and heartbreak. She felt the world tilt around her, the judgment, the humiliation pressing down like a physical force. But somewhere inside, beyond the terror and exhaustion, a small, stubborn spark refused to die. They didn't know her, but they would, because this wasn't her ending. This was her beginning, and they had no idea what she was about to do next. The press had torn into her. Flashing cameras, cruel whispers, and scandalous headlines became her constant companions. Olivia was drowning in it all. 7 months pregnant, humiliated in front of the world. She felt a wave of cold, hard anger that threatened to consume her. Sophia's slap still burned on her cheek. A phantom sting, but it wasn't the physical pain that kept her up at night. It was the horrifying realization that everything she had believed in, her entire life, had been a meticulously crafted lie. The world saw the humiliation, but Olivia knew she couldn't just sit back and let them destroy her. She hired a private investigator, a discreet professional, someone who would uncover the truth hidden beneath the polished veneer of her husband's life. She needed to regain control. She would find out everything, expose them for the frauds they were, and make them regret this betrayal before it consumed her and her unborn child. A new war had begun, and she wasn't going to lose. As she lay in bed, unable to sleep, memories flooded her mind, memories she had ignored, silenced by the comforting, deceitful lie of love. The sprawling mansion, once a place of joy and shared dreams, now felt like a gilded prison. She recalled locked doors, hushed conversations that ceased abruptly when she entered a room, Ethan's eyes darting away when she asked simple questions, the sudden, uncomfortable silences when she joined him. She had chalked it up to stress, the demands of a busy life. But now, with the scales fallen from her eyes, she saw clearly. She had been too trusting, too naive. The signs were always there, hidden in the quiet. Unsaling moments. He wasn't just distant. He was hiding something, someone. She could hear the whispers now, the ones she dismissed. They had always been there, just under the surface. But she was awake now, and no amount of diamond-studded distractions could keep her from uncovering the truth. The weight of betrayal crushed her chest as Olivia stood in front of the grand mirrors in their opulent mansion. She was torn between two choices: run far away, protect her unborn child, and start a new life somewhere far from the drama, or stay and fight, take down the man who destroyed her and the woman who had no place in her life. The reflection staring back at her wasn't just a broken woman. It was a warrior being forged in the fires of her desolation. Every muscle in her body screamed to run, to escape. But somewhere deeper, a fire ignited, a quiet, resolute voice that whispered, "You deserve to fight. You deserve to win." She clutched her belly, feeling the faint kick of her child, and knew this battle wasn't just for her. It was for the tiny life depending on her strength. What was the right choice? Should she run and protect herself from the emotional destruction that awaited? Or should she confront the monsters that lived within her marriage and tear them apart? Every instinct told her to run, but she knew deep down that leaving would mean living in fear, always looking over her shoulder. No, Olivia thought, her jaw tightening. She was done running. She would make them pay. The private investigator's report confirmed what Olivia had feared. It was far worse than she could have imagined. Sophia wasn't just an ex-girlfriend who had resurfaced. She was still Ethan's mistress. The affair had never ended. It had run parallel to her marriage. A dark, hidden undercurrent. It ran much deeper than Olivia had dared to imagine. Sophia was woven into their lives, into Ethan's business, his world. Olivia had been nothing more than a trophy, an ornament to maintain his pristine public reputation. She felt her blood boil as the irrefutable evidence was laid bare before her eyes. Her anger grew like a storm inside her, a tempest of rage and sorrow. She was the fool, the naive woman who had been fed lies, who had willingly swallowed them. But that was about to change. Ethan and Sophia had made their move, and now it was Olivia's turn to take control. The investigation dug deeper, revealing a chilling, insidious truth. Her signature had been forged on numerous documents, used to launder millions unwittingly. She had been dragged into Ethan's web of corruption, made an unknowing participant in his crimes. The weight of this revelation hit her like a punch to the gut, knocking the air from her lungs. Everything she thought she knew about her life, her marriage, was a lie. A suffocating sense of violation crept over her, heavier than anything she had ever known. She hadn't just lost her marriage. She had lost her dignity, her name, her very identity. Tears blurred her vision, not from weakness, but from an outrage so fierce it felt like it would tear her apart. The idea that her name, her reputation, had been used for illegal dealings made her feel sullied, tainted. She was trapped, a pawn in his despicable game, and now she was legally tied to his crimes. But she wasn't going to let him get away with it. She would fight back, expose him for everything he was, and tear his ill-gotten empire down from the inside out. Olivia wasn't just an unwilling accomplice. She had been Ethan's greatest, albeit unwitting, asset. Her beauty, her social standing, the image of a glamorous, devoted wife, added a veneer of legitimacy to his empire. But she was never a true partner. Ethan had used her to lure in investors, to seal deals, to build a network that only benefited himself. As the layers of deceit peeled away, Olivia saw the cold, hard truth with painful clarity. She had been nothing more than a pretty prop, a symbol of his success, a carefully curated piece of his public image. The realization made her sick to her stomach, a bitter taste in her mouth. But now, she was going to turn the tables. If Ethan wanted her to be his tool, then she would become the one thing he could never control, his undoing. The fall from grace was swift and unforgiving. Ethan moved fast, stripping Olivia of everything she once held dear. Accounts were frozen, properties blocked, Her own home, the one she had lovingly decorated, taken from her. Olivia was left with nothing and nowhere to go. Worse still, Ethan did it all with a cold, calculated precision of a man without a heart, without a shred of remorse. He had erased her from his life as if she had never existed, their years together meaningless. But Olivia wasn't going to take this lying down. She would rebuild, starting from the ground up, and take back everything he had stolen from her. The world would know her story. They would see the truth of who Ethan Voss really was. The penthouse that once felt like a sanctuary, a haven of love and security, now felt like a gilded cage. Luxury no longer offered comfort. It suffocated her. She was trapped in a life she didn't choose, a life built on Ethan's treachery. Her body ached with the stress of it all, the constant tension a heavy weight on her shoulders. The baby kicked relentlessly, as if even the child sensed the turmoil, the impending storm. Olivia's strength was fading, but her will to survive was growing stronger with each passing day. She couldn't let herself fall apart. Not now. Not when there was so much at stake. She had to keep going. She had to fight for herself and for the child growing inside her. Ethan was not a man to lose quietly. As she lay low, recovering from the public scandal and planning her next move, he began his insidious campaign to destroy her in the media. He spun a narrative that she was unstable, a woman who couldn't handle the pressures of their high-profile life, prone to hysterics and delusions. The press, eager for a salacious story, lapped it up, turning on her in a heartbeat, while she hid in the shadows, nursing her wounds and her anger. He painted her as the villain, the crazy, spurned wife. But Olivia wasn't going to let him control the narrative any longer. She would fight back, not just for herself, but for the truth. And she would make sure the world saw who Ethan really was, the monster hiding behind the charming facade. As she sat in the darkened penthouse, the city lights twinkling mockingly below, Olivia remembered the early days of her relationship with Ethan. He had always been charming, a master of manipulation. She now realized, but what she hadn't seen then, blinded by love, was the subtle isolation he was weaving around her. Friends, family, even her own independence one by one. They had been stripped away, her world shrinking until he was its sole inhabitant. Ethan had always been controlling, but she hadn't recognized the subtle, insidious ways he kept her to himself. He told her it was for their future, for their love, a testament to their unique bond. But in reality, it was about control. Olivia couldn't leave the gilded bubble he had created for her. She was cut off from everyone who mattered, made to feel as though only he could offer her the world. Only he truly understood her. At first, it seemed like an intense, all-consuming love. But now she saw it clearly for what it was: possession. Every moment of trust, every shared smile, every whispered, "I love you," was just another thread in his meticulously spun web. And now, when she needed help the most, she had no one to turn to. Ethan had planned this all along. Isolation was his way of making sure she never had the strength to walk away. Olivia had agreed to an exclusive interview, hoping to finally share her side of the story, to reclaim her voice. But as the cameras rolled and the carefully chosen questions started, it became chillingly clear that someone had sabotaged her. The footage was manipulated, her words twisted and taken out of context, and the interview was used to further paint her as a mentally unstable, vindictive woman. They had done it again. Ethan, Sophia, and the complicit media. They had controlled the narrative, silencing her before she could even speak her truth. The betrayal cut deeper than she had imagined possible. As the broadcast aired and the damning headlines began to spin out of control, Olivia sat frozen in front of the TV, a gnawing, insidious doubt creeping into her heart. For a fleeting, painful moment, she wondered if maybe they were right. Had she been foolish? Had she been blind to a truth everyone else could see? The questions clawed at her, feeding the old insecurities Ethan had so skillfully planted long ago. But as the tears blurred her vision, she clenched her fists and forced herself to remember. She wasn't crazy. She was betrayed. She wasn't unstable. She was wounded, and she would not let their lies define her. Yet, as the interview ended and the camera shut off, Olivia felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. They might have silenced her in that moment, but they hadn't broken her. She still had the truth. She still had the power to expose them. The world might not know her side of the story yet, but Olivia wasn't going to let this defeat her. It was just another round in the game, and this time, she was determined to win. The chase was relentless. Olivia couldn't escape the paparazzi. Every time she stepped outside, they were there, a swarm of vultures, cameras flashing, microphones thrust in her face, pushing her further into the madness. It was as though the world was hunting her, waiting for her to crack under the immense pressure. She was already on edge, her pregnancy taking its toll, her body straining to carry the weight of the lies and betrayal. The paparazzi's aggressive pursuit almost led her to an early labor. Her heart raced, her breath shallow and ragged. She stumbled, barely catching herself as they closed in, their lenses like hungry eyes. But in that moment, it wasn't just the cameras that were threatening her. It was the constant barrage of lies, the crushing weight of the public humiliation, and the devastating fact that she was carrying a child that would be marked by all of this before it even took its first breath. She couldn't believe it. Ethan had turned her life into a public spectacle, a cruel circus for the masses. But no matter how hard they tried to push her down, she wasn't going to give in. She would fight, no matter what it cost her. The phone call came on a rainy afternoon, and it felt like the universe was finally handing her a lifeline. A lawyer, previously unknown to her, had been trying to get in touch for days. When they finally spoke, the man revealed that there was something she needed to know, something that could change everything. Ethan had an unfiled will, a legal document hidden away that could shift the entire balance of power in this brutal war. Olivia's heart raced as she listened to the lawyer's measured words. This wasn't just any will. It was a backup plan, a contingency Ethan had concealed, never meant to see the light of day. The lawyer couldn't reveal the exact details yet, due to legal constraints, but he assured her that the will contained something critical, something that could be leveraged. Olivia felt a spark of hope, a fragile ember she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. Ethan thought he had everything wrapped up, that he had crushed her completely. But she wasn't done. She had a chance to take back everything, to reclaim her life and her dignity. The path ahead was still dark and treacherous, but for the first time in a long while, Olivia saw a glimmer of light. The safe was buried deep in Ethan's private office, a fortress of steel and secrets that seemed impenetrable. But Olivia was beyond caring about the risks now. She had to know the truth, no matter what. With the discreet help of the lawyer who had contacted her, she obtained the necessary tools and information, the combination, schematics of the office. It was a dangerous, audacious move, breaking into a millionaire's empire, putting her own safety and freedom at risk. But Olivia was desperate. She was a woman pushed to the edge. The night was her ally as she crept through the silent, cavernous mansion, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had come this far. She couldn't turn back now. Her fingers trembled as she carefully cracked the code to the safe. The sound of the dial turning, the soft clicks, seemed deafening in the oppressive silence. The moment the heavy door swung open, she felt a rush of adrenaline, a heady mix of fear and triumph. There it was, the original will, bound in a simple blue folder, and alongside it, a small, innocuous flash drive marked with a stark, handwritten warning, contingency. Olivia didn't need to look twice to know this was her key to revenge. This was the moment that would change everything. With the will and the flash drive clutched tightly in her hands, she felt an overwhelming sense of power. The empire Ethan had built on deceit and cruelty was about to come crashing down. The flash drive revealed the tape that would be the final, devastating blow. It showed him and Sophia, relaxed and unguarded, laughing as they discussed how they had trained Olivia, manipulated her every move, and used her to further their own selfish goals. They mocked her, calling her naive, adorably blind to the truth that was so obvious to them. They thought they had won, that she was a permanent fixture in their twisted game. But the footage was damning, irrefutable proof of everything she had feared and more. Ethan had been using her emotionally, a master puppeteer, all while pretending to be the perfect, doting husband. Sophia, his partner in crime, was just as complicit, her laughter as cruel as his words. Watching the tape made Olivia's blood boil, a cold, righteous fury settling deep in her bones. She was no longer the naive, trusting woman who had been manipulated. She was a force to be reckoned with, and this tape was her weapon. Filing the will and releasing the footage would destroy them both, their wealth, their carefully constructed reputations, their future. It would all crumble under the undeniable weight of the truth. Olivia had no illusions. Ethan would fight back, viciously and without mercy. But this time, he wouldn't have control. She had the leverage now, and the world would finally see the real Ethan Voss, the monster beneath the charming veneer. But it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming her life, her sanity, and ensuring no one else would ever be destroyed by his insidious lies again. The first strike was only the beginning. Just when Olivia thought she had seen the absolute depths of Ethan's depravity, the private investigator returned with a revelation that shook her to her very core. A truth so vile it seemed to eclipse everything else. Sophia wasn't just a mistress. She was Ethan's secret half-sister, the product of a long-forgotten affair his father had concealed. The truth was darker, more twisted than Olivia could have ever imagined. Their relationship wasn't just immoral. It was criminal, an abomination. Olivia's mind raced, struggling to process the horrific implications. Her trust, her memories, even the love she thought she had shared with Ethan, now felt irreparably tainted, poisoned by this unspeakable secret. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was incest, the empire Ethan had built. The life he paraded before the world was rooted not only in corruption and deceit, but in an unimaginable darkness. The world wouldn't just see him as a cheating husband or a ruthless businessman. They would see him for the monster he truly was. Olivia felt a deep, nauseating wave of rage wash over her, mixed with a profound sense of disgust. Everything she had endured, every humiliation, every tear, seemed small compared to this grotesque reality. But now, armed with this devastating truth, she had the power to bring it all crashing down, to expose the rot at the core of his existence. Ethan's manipulation went far beyond what Olivia could have ever imagined. It wasn't just her heart he had broken. It was the very law, the basic tenets of human decency. The truth was darker, more twisted than any of the lies he had spun to protect himself. And now Olivia had the power to expose it all. The world would know the truth, and she would make sure that no one could ignore it. Olivia sat alone in the sterile quiet of a temporary apartment, the weight of everything crashing down on her. Revenge wasn't enough anymore. Exposing Ethan and Sophia wasn't just about hurting them. It was about saving herself and her child from the toxic fallout of their lives. She had been living in a world of lies and deception, a carefully constructed illusion. But now she had the power to bring it all to an end. Ethan and Sophia's empire, built on a foundation of corruption and forbidden secrets, would crumble, and the world would see them for what they truly were. But Olivia didn't just want revenge. She wanted justice. She wanted to make sure no one else fell victim to the darkness that had consumed her life. It was time to expose the truth, to stand tall, and to ensure that the consequences of their actions would be felt by everyone involved. They had ruined her life, but now she would take back control. It wasn't just about vengeance. It was about exposing the evil that had lived in the shadows for far too long. The grand ballroom glittered in gold and velvet, the chandeliers sparkling like captive stars. The elite of the city had gathered for a prestigious art showcase, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit them. The air was thick with the scent of expensive champagne, forced laughter, and the cloying aroma of designer perfume. But behind the glamour, standing poised near a discreetly placed control panel, Olivia stood in the center of the room, her eyes cold and determined. She had set the perfect trap, and it was now time to watch it snap shut. This wasn't just an art showcase. This was her reckoning. Every detail had been carefully planned. The press, invited under the guise of covering the high society event, was in the front row, cameras ready. The rich and powerful, the very people Ethan had courted and deceived, gathered around her like moths to a dangerous flame. They had no idea they were about to witness the biggest scandal of the year, a public unraveling of epic proportions. As the soft strains of a string quartet played, Olivia's lips curved into a smile, but there was nothing sweet or gentle about it. This was the calm before the storm. Ethan would be here soon, his characteristic arrogance blinding him to the fact that Olivia had already won. This night, she would expose him. The lies, the betrayal, the manipulation, the incestuous affair. The financial crime set was all about to be revealed, and it would be her hand that delivered the decisive blow. As she waited, her fingers brushed over the cool metal of the projector remote hidden in her evening bag. It felt heavy, but not in the way a simple device should. It was the weight of justice, of a future reclaimed. She had spent months preparing for this moment, setting the stage for the ultimate betrayal of the betrayer. When the crowd buzzed in anticipation for the evening's main presentation, Olivia knew the time had come. She gave one last glance at the grand entrance, her breath catching in her throat as the ornate doors swung open. Ethan had arrived, Sophia clinging to his arm like a poisonous vine. The game was on. The door opened, and Ethan strode into the room, his confidence oozing from every perfectly tailored inch of him. Dressed in an expensive bespoke suit, he walked with a swagger that only the truly powerful, or the truly deluded, possessed. His hand rested possessively on Sophia's waist as they entered the room together, her arm linked tightly with his. She was draped in a shimmering sequin dress that seemed to match Ethan's overblown sense of self-importance. Ethan's eyes scanned the crowd, a smug, self-satisfied smile curling his lips. He was untouchable, or so he believed. His empire was built on lies, his despicable actions protected by money and influence. But Olivia knew the truth, and soon, everyone else would too. He was about to realize that no amount of wealth or power could save him from what was coming. Olivia stood across the room, a vision in emerald green that accentuated her pregnancy, her heart pounding a steady, determined rhythm as she watched him approach. Ethan hadn't changed. He still moved with that same arrogant belief that his charm, his reputation, could keep him safe from any consequence. But he had underestimated her. He had mistaken her pain for weakness. The trap was set, and he was walking right into it. The guests greeted him with forced, fawning smiles, all of them eager to rub elbows with a man they thought was an indomitable titan of industry. And as Ethan took a glass of champagne from a passing tray, he felt nothing but victory, a sense of impending triumph. Little did he know, his world was about to come crashing down around him. The music slowed, and all eyes turned toward the entrance as Olivia, seemingly making her own grand entrance. Stepped further into the room. She was glowing, 7 months pregnant, her hand resting gently on her belly. But it wasn't the pregnancy that commanded attention. It was her presence. Her back was straight, her head held high, a look of unwavering, almost terrifying determination in her eyes. The room fell silent as her heels clicked purposefully against the polished marble floor. Ethan's gaze locked with hers, and for the first time in years, perhaps ever, there was no smile on his face. A flicker of unease, then something akin to dawning horror, crossed his features. She wasn't the fragile, broken woman he had left behind at the gala. This Olivia was someone else entirely. She was the woman who had been pushed to her breaking point and had come out stronger, smarter, and ready for revenge. Olivia's expression was unreadable, her face a perfect mask of calm. But inside, her emotions were a raging storm. She wanted to scream, to lash out at him, to unleash all the pain he had caused. But she knew better. The game had changed, and she was in control now. Every step she took toward him was a step toward victory. A victory she had earned through tears, sleepless nights, and an unyielding resolve after years of being deceived and manipulated. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as Olivia approached, his smug confidence beginning to crack, to visibly crumble. This wasn't the woman he thought he had broken. This was someone far more dangerous. Without warning, the lights in the room flickered and died. The chatter of the guests fell into hushed confusion. The music stopped abruptly. The room plunged into darkness, and a collective gasp spread through the crowd. Then, the large screen at the back of the gallery, intended for the art presentation, flickered to life, casting a cold, blue light over the stunned room. The crowd fell silent as the image of Ethan and Sophia appeared, lounging in what was clearly his private study. The hidden camera footage began to play, and the room was filled with the sound of Ethan's voice, smug and contemptuous. His words cut through the silence like a knife. "This is how I trained her. Sophia. Like a dog. She doesn't know anything else. I made her believe I love her. She's been so obedient, so pathetic. She'll do whatever I tell her." The gasps from the crowd were audible, sharp intakes of breath rippling through the room as shock and disbelief washed over every face. People turned toward Ethan, who stood frozen, his face draining of color, his champagne flute slipping from suddenly nerveless fingers to shatter on the marble floor. Sophia's hand trembled in his, but she refused to let go, even as she watched the footage of them mocking Olivia, laughing at her pain, her trust, her loyalty. The camera zoomed in on their faces, showing the cruelty and manipulation they had hidden for so long. Every word, every shared, derisive laugh was now exposed. The woman they had thought they had broken was standing in front of them, and the devastating truth was being laid bare for everyone to see. The room went deathly quiet, the only sound the chilling audio from a screen. Ethan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He tried to speak, to defend himself, to deny it, but nothing came out, only a strangled sound. The footage continued, each word more damning than the last. Olivia watched, her expression unyielding, as Ethan's smirk appeared on the screen, mocking her every move, belittling her like she was nothing more than a tool in his life, a means to an end. His voice rang out, colder and more callous than she had ever heard it. "She's like a dog. Sophia, you give her a command, and she follows. She's obedient, just like I trained her. You should see the way she looks at me sometimes. It's pathetic, but she's so damn useful." The crowd gasped again, a wave of murmurs spreading. The cameras flashed, capturing Ethan's horrified face. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of impending justice. But she didn't flinch. She had known this moment would come, had replayed it in her mind 1,000 times. This was the moment when the world would see Ethan for who he really was. The words were harsh, unforgiving, but they were also the truth. The truth that she had lived with, unknowingly, for far too long. She had been nothing more than a puppet in Ethan's sick game, manipulated into believing she was loved when in reality, she was just a pawn. Ethan's face twisted with rage as he realized what was happening. The full extent of his exposure. The man who had thought he could control everything was now laid bare for the world to see. Olivia's revenge had begun. The footage cut abruptly, and a new image appeared on the screen, a scanned legal document. The room went silent once more as the camera zoomed in on the will. Ethan's secret, unfileable that he had tried so desperately to keep hidden. Olivia watched as the document flashed across the screen, its clauses highlighted, the truth shining bright for all to see. The will was clear. In the event of his duplicity being proven, a significant portion of his assets, including controlling shares in his company, were to be transferred to Olivia. Ethan's entire empire was in jeopardy. The business, the fortune, the life he had so ruthlessly built. Everything was suddenly hanging by a thread, and it was all because she had found it. The will had been tucked away, a contingency never meant to see the light of day. But now it was out in the open, and the consequences were immediate and devastating. Ethan's face turned white, his body stiffening as he realized the power that Olivia now held. This wasn't just about public humiliation anymore. This was about his downfall. The will was a ticking time bomb, and she had just lit the fuse. Ethan lunged forward, his face contorted with an unholy rage. You think you've won? Olivia? You're nothing. You'll never take me down. His voice cracked, a desperate, pathetic attempt to hold on to his shattered arrogance. Olivia stood her ground, unfazed by his outburst. You've already lost. Ethan, you just don't know it yet. But Ethan wasn't done. With a furious growl, he took a menacing step toward her, his hand reaching out as if he could physically silence her. Erase the truth. I'll make you regret this. You and your bastard child will be nothing. You'll never take me down. He spat, his words laced with venom. Olivia's expression remained calm, but her eyes burned with a fire that couldn't be extinguished. You're already finished. The room buzzed with tension as Ethan's last threat hung in the air. But no one believed him anymore. He was powerless, his carefully constructed facade shattered, his empire crumbling before his very eyes. Olivia didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly pulled a thick envelope from her evening bag. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she held up the custody agreement, the one Ethan never expected her to find, the one that detailed his unsuitability as a parent given his illegal activities and moral failings. Sign this. Ethan, Olivia said coldly, her voice slicing through the tension in the room. Clear and strong. Sign away your parental rights, or lose everything else you have left. Your choice. Ethan's face twisted in disbelief. You can't do this. That's my child. Olivia's lips curled into a small, mirthless smile. Not anymore. This agreement, coupled with the evidence of your activities, strips you of everything. Power, legacy, and control. All of it. It's done. The silence in the room was deafening. Ethan's eyes flicked to Sophia, who stood frozen, staring at the document in Olivia's hand, her own face a mask of horror. His world was collapsing around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. She didn't need just the tape anymore. She held the final weapon in her hand. Olivia's voice rang out, cutting through the chaos in the room. You'll never use our child the way you used me. Ethan, you lost that right the moment you betrayed me, the moment you chose this path. Her words were simple, but they were sharp, like a sword slicing through the air, severing the last of his power. Ethan's face went pale, the blood draining from his features as he realized the full import of her words. His empire, his future, His control over her, they were all gone. There was nothing left. No power. No liberty. He had no choice but to stand there, broken and exposed, as the woman he thought he had destroyed crushed him completely. The room was thick with tension, the eyes of the elite glued to the scene unfolding before them. Sophia, trembling beside Ethan, could no longer hold her composure. Her gaze darted between him and the damning screen. The weight of everything that had just been exposed, their affair, their complicity, their shared deceit, and now the unspoken horror of their true relationship hinted at by the PIs earlier. Discreet leaks to certain press members in the room crashing down on her. Her voice was raw with rage and a dawning, sickening understanding as she turned toward Ethan, her lips trembling with fury. You used me. Ethan, you knew. You promised me everything. And this is how you repay me? You let me. With you. Knowing? With a scream of utter betrayal and self-loathing, Sophia slapped Ethan hard across the face, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot. The crowd gasped as her hand stung his cheek. The very man who had once used her for his gain, now standing before her as a shell of the powerful figure he once was now being publicly condemned by his own partner in crime. Ethan's head snapped to the side, his expression one of shock and dazed disbelief. But Sophia didn't care. The man who had destroyed her, who had dragged her into his abyss, had no more power over her, and her world was crumbling too. The relationship, the trust, the lies, the unspeakable truth, they all imploded in that one violent, public moment. As the chaos in the room reached its peak, the main doors to the gallery burst open, and two uniformed police officers stormed in, their expressions grim, their presence sharp and intimidating. The crowd parted, whispers and murmurs filling the air as the officers walked purposefully toward Ethan. Without hesitation, they placed him under arrest, their voices steady and firm. Ethan Voss, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to defraud the public. The room erupted into a frenzy. The flashes of cameras were relentless, capturing every moment of his downfall. Ethan stood frozen, his empire crumbling to dust around him as the law finally dragged him away, his face contorted in disbelief, then rage, then a pathetic whimper. Sophia's face twisted in agony as she stumbled backward, her hands clutching at her chest. The cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing her every movement as she collapsed onto the cold marble steps. The world was watching, and it felt like every breath she took was suffocating her. Sophia gasped, her breathing shallow and erratic, and then her eyes widened in terror. Her body shook, her knees giving way beneath her as her head spun, in a desperate attempt to escape, to numb the unbearable pain and shame. Sophia had taken something, a cocktail of pills she'd kept for such an eventuality. But it was too much. The poison in her system was too strong, too fast. Her body trembled uncontrollably as she slid down the steps, a grotesque parody of a dramatic exit. Her once perfect appearance, her carefully constructed facade, now shattered. The crowd moved in, some in horror, others with a morbid, detached pity. Sophia's guilt, her ambition, her terrible secrets had poisoned her, and now it was taking its final toll. She couldn't run from the consequences of her actions. Not anymore. The flashbulbs continued to pop, each one capturing the ignominious fall of the woman who had once stood so proudly, so defiantly, beside Ethan. Her collapse was as public and as brutal as her betrayal. As the world around her burned, Olivia stood at the center of it all, her face calm, yet full of an undeniable strength. The police took Ethan away, his cries and protests fading into the distance. The crowd began to dissipate, the initial shock giving way to excited murmurs and the hurried tapping of fingers on phones. But Olivia remained unmoved, a still point in the swirling chaos. Then, a sharp, undeniable pain cut through her, sending her body into shock. Her breath hitched. The contractions had started. A deep breath, a long exhale, and Olivia closed her eyes for a moment. The time had come. Her world had been torn apart by betrayal and deceit. But now, in the middle of the chaos, she was about to bring a new life into it. The pain was real, intense, but so was the hope. She gritted her teeth, pushing through the agony. The crowd began to murmur anew as Olivia's body bent in the first unmistakable stages of labor. Every nerve in her body screamed in pain. But deep inside, an unshakable resolve took root. This was her moment to endure, to fight through the agony and claim the future she and her daughter deserved. She whispered silent promises to the tiny life within her as each wave of contraction tore through her. I will protect you. I will never let you be broken the way I was. It wasn't just her body giving birth. It was her spirit, raw and powerful, breaking free from years of betrayal and pain. This was her redemption. The birth of her child marked the beginning of something new. A new life, a new future, untainted by the past. And for the first time in years, Olivia felt the crushing weight of the world lift from her shoulders. Olivia's breath hitched as another wave of pain hit her, and she doubled over, her hand gripping the edge of a nearby, overturned table for support. Her heart raced, her eyes wide with a fierce determination. The world had come crashing down around her, spectacularly and brutally. But in this moment, Olivia wasn't broken. She wasn't defeated. She was about to bring new life into the world, a life that would rise from the ashes of everything she had lost. It's time, Olivia whispered through clenched teeth, a small, almost serene smile touching her lips. The room fell silent, the remaining onlookers watching in awe. The tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. The next chapter was about to begin, and no one knew what it would hold. But one thing was certain. This was only the beginning of Olivia Thompson's story. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, a raw wound that throbbed beneath the surface. But as Olivia held her newborn daughter, everything else faded into the background. The world outside, still full of whispers, flashing cameras, and the fallout of Ethan's disgrace, seemed distant as she cradled the tiny, perfect life in her arms. Hope. She had named her Hope, born in the chaos of betrayal, a symbol of everything Olivia had lost and everything she now had to fight for. The nurses buzzed around her in the quiet hospital room, but her focus never wavered from the tiny face looking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. This was her future now, not the crumbling empire she once shared with Ethan, not the glamorous, hollow life that had come crashing down with the weight of his lies. Hope was her new beginning, her new strength. The life she would build was no longer one of luxury and deceit. It would be one of love, resilience, and hard-won justice. As she looked down at her daughter, Olivia knew one thing for sure. She would protect this little girl with everything she had. Nothing and no one would ever break her again. This child, born in the ashes of betrayal, would be the light that led her out of the darkness. And from this moment forward, she would fight for hope for herself, for her daughter, and for every woman whose voice had been silenced by a man's power and deceit. The penthouse, reclaimed through legal battles and Ethan's downfall, was quiet now, a stark contrast to the storm that had raged just days before. From the floor-to-ceiling windows, Olivia watched as the city sprawled beneath her, its lights twinkling like the distant stars she had once dreamed of reaching with Ethan. But everything felt different now. The view had once represented a life of shared luxury and power, but now it was just a reminder of the wreckage she had risen from. a testament to her survival. She sat in the plush armchair, holding Hope close to her chest, feeling the warmth of the tiny, sleeping body in her arms. Her body still ached from the trauma of childbirth, both physical and emotional. She had lost so much: her marriage, her trust, her place in a world that had once seemed so perfect and secure. But now, in this space away from the chaos, Olivia was starting to heal, truly heal. She had been through the worst. She had seen the darkest sides of love, betrayal, and revenge. But with Hope by her side, everything had changed. Each moment she spent with her daughter, each soft coo, each tiny grasp of her finger, felt like a step forward into a new world, one she would build from the ground up, one where she held the power, where she had the power to define her own future. Olivia's journey to healing wasn't gentle or swift. There were no soft embraces from a loving partner or peaceful moments of easy reflection. Every day was a battle. The physical pain of childbirth was nothing compared to the deep, emotional toll she had endured. But every step she took forward, however small, was a victory in itself. She woke up each day with one thing in mind: survival, for herself and for Hope. She spent sleepless nights holding her daughter, trying to reconcile the woman she had been naive, trusting with the woman she was becoming resilient, wary, but strong. Some nights, when the weight of everything felt too heavy to bear, Olivia would find herself sitting by the window, Hope cradled in her arms, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. A hollow ache gnawed at her, the lingering shadows of loneliness, of fear, of doubt. Was she enough? Could she protect this innocent soul from a world that had been so cruel to her? The darkness whispered cruel, insidious doubts into her ears. But every time, she would look down at Hope's tiny, peaceful sleeping face and find the courage to wipe away the tears and keep moving forward. The world watched as she fought back from the wreckage. News outlets, once baying for her blood, now followed her every move with a mixture of fascination and reluctant admiration. Their headlines were a confusing mix of sympathy and lingering judgment. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was her resolve, her unyielding will to rebuild. She wasn't just recovering. She was reclaiming everything: her dignity, her strength, and her future. The road ahead wasn't easy. She knew that, but it was hers to walk. And with each passing day, Olivia grew stronger, more determined to rise from the ashes, to prove that she was more than a victim of her circumstances. She was a survivor. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Olivia sat in the front row, her posture erect, her eyes unwavering as Ethan's lawyer presented their desperate, flimsy case. He was trying to paint her as the villain, twisting the narrative to make it seem like she was the one who had destroyed their family, their empire, driven by jealousy and spite. But Olivia knew the truth, and soon the world would know it, too. As the witnesses took the stand, each one brought the truth to light, piece by damning piece, stripping Ethan of the empire he had so carefully, so ruthlessly built on lies and exploitation. The press, who had once adored him, lauding his business acumen, now watched in stunned shock as the man they had praised for years was slowly, meticulously brought down. Each new revelation was a punch to the gut for his remaining supporters. Each testimony, another nail in the coffin of his tarnished legacy. And then it was her turn. Olivia stood, her voice steady but powerful, as she told the world, under oath, what Ethan had done to her, to their family, to their supposed empire. She was no longer the woman he had manipulated, the one who had been so easily fooled. She was no longer the woman who had suffered in silence. This was her time, her stage, and she would make sure the world knew the unvarnished truth. The courtroom was her arena, and karma, she thought with a grim satisfaction, was the judge. Ethan's crimes were unraveling before the eyes of everyone who had once stood by him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Now, Sophia's fall was swift, but unlike Ethan's loud, public disgrace, hers was silent and ugly. Once the glamorous, triumphant mistress, the woman who had arrogantly thought she could take Olivia's place, Sophia now found herself alone in the shadows. Her health shattered, her reputation in ruins. Her wealth and status were gone, stripped away as the full truth about her role in the betrayal and the darker secrets of her relationship with Ethan came to light. Ethan had promised her the world, but he had used her, too, in ways more depraved than she could have imagined until it was too late. And now she was left with nothing but the wreckage of her own ambition and the horrifying consequences of her choices. She disappeared from the public eye, hiding from the world that now viewed her with contempt and pity. The elite who had once courted her, who had whispered about her daring affair, now turned their backs, eager to distance themselves from the scandal. Sophia was left to face the dire consequences of her actions. A broken and forgotten woman. The woman who had once thought she could steal everything from Olivia had ended up with nothing, losing herself in the process. Her rise had been fast and fueled by deceit, but her fall was even faster and far more complete. The Blackwood name, Ethan's family name that he had used to build his facade, had once been a symbol of power, wealth, and control, but now Olivia was burying it. She had no use for the legacy Ethan had tried to build on deceit, betrayal, and corruption. The Blackwood Empire, as it was known, would die with him, with his incarceration, and from its ashes, Olivia would rise. She rebranded everything. The legitimate parts of the business she now controlled, changing the name, the image, the entire vision. The empire that had once been built on lies would now be built on truth, transparency, and strength. It wasn't just a business anymore. It was a symbol of her survival, her determination to overcome everything Ethan had thrown at her. And so, she named it after her daughter, Hope, the Hope Corporation. The Blackwood Empire was no more, replaced by something stronger, something that couldn't be touched or tarnished by the lies of the past. Hope will be the new face of everything Olivia built, a new legacy born from the ashes of everything that had tried to break her. The journalist, Michael, who had once risked his career to try and tell Olivia's story fairly, returned. But this time, it wasn't the same. He had seen the truth in Olivia's fight, had watched her rise from the ashes with a quiet awe. And now he was part of her world in a way that was different, more personal. He had been one of the few to initially believe her, to help expose Ethan's lies. But now it was Olivia who held the power, who dictated the terms. The bond between them had shifted. What had once been a professional interview, a source-journalist relationship, turned into something deeper, more meaningful. It wasn't about a story anymore. It was about truth, redemption, and a quiet, unassuming connection they had formed through their shared struggle against Ethan's machinations. They spent quiet nights talking, not about the past, but about the future, about building something that mattered, something real. Olivia no longer saw him as just a journalist. He was someone who saw her for who she truly was, beyond the headlines and the scandal. Someone who didn't want power or fame, but simply the truth, and perhaps her. And slowly, carefully, her heart began to open to him, a heart that had once been closed off to love, shattered and barricaded, a heart that was now, tentatively, learning to trust again. Olivia's new love story was quiet, a far cry from the glamorous, public, and ultimately toxic relationship she had once shared with Ethan. There were no grand gestures or dramatic displays of affection for the paparazzi. This love was built in the quiet moments, the shared glances over a sleeping Hope, the moments when they shared their hopes, their scars, and their dreams. It wasn't about what the world could see. It was about what they had between them. A gentle understanding, a mutual respect, a love that didn't need to be loud to be real. Their connection grew slowly, organically, over late-night conversations fueled by coffee and shared silences that were comfortable, not awkward. It wasn't flashy, but it was strong, rooted in honesty and shared experience. In these quiet spaces, Olivia found a comfort she hadn't known existed. She had spent so long fighting for everything she had, for her survival, for her daughter. But now, she was learning to give her heart, piece by fragile piece, to someone who understood her, who respected her, and who loved her for everything she was, broken pieces and all. This love wasn't about escaping the pain of the past. It was about healing together in a world that had tried to tear them both apart in different ways. Pain had once been her constant companion, her burden, but now it was her strength. She took everything she had endured, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the public humiliation, and turned it into something that could help others. She established the Hope Foundation alongside her corporation, donating millions to women's shelters, organizations that helped women escape from abusive relationships, and programs that gave them the tools and resources to rebuild their lives. Her pain had been weaponized, not for revenge, but for radical, positive change. She used her platform, her story, to raise awareness, to give a voice to those who had been silenced, who felt trapped and alone. The world watched as Olivia transformed her trauma into power, using her own harrowing story to inspire others, to show them that it was possible to survive, to thrive, even after the deepest betrayals. She had been through hell, but now she was giving back, helping others avoid the traps that had once ensnared her. It wasn't about revenge anymore. That chapter was closed. It was about making a difference, about turning her suffering into something that could save lives, that could offer solace and strength. And with every life she touched, with every woman she empowered, she grew stronger, more whole. 1 year had passed since everything changed. The betrayal, the courtroom battles, the painful but triumphant rise from the ashes. And now, on the anniversary of her public downfall and subsequent rise, Olivia stood tall, a force to be reckoned with. She held Hope, now a babbling toddler, in her arms, the little girl who had given her a reason to fight when everything seemed lost. Olivia's new empire, the Hope Corporation and the Hope Foundation, was thriving. The name that had once been a fragile wish whispered in a hospital room was now a beacon of hope for many, a symbol of resilience, integrity, and power. The world saw her now, not as the woman who had been broken, but as the woman who had rebuilt herself, stronger and wiser. From the ground up, the skyline of the city, once a backdrop to her despair, now seemed to tremble beneath her heels as she walked confidently into her future. Her head held high, the weight of her past no longer a burden, but a reminder of her incredible strength. She had done it. She had won, and the world would never forget the name Hope, or the woman who embodied it. Olivia's voice echoed across the stage of a packed auditorium, clear and strong, as she accepted an award for her philanthropic work. "They try to break me," she said, her gaze sweeping over the audience, her daughter smiling in Michael's arms in the front row. "But in doing so, I didn't just find my strength. I gave birth to it." The room fell silent as those words rang out, powerful and defiant. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a survivor, a victor. The world had watched her fall, and now they were watching her rise, higher than ever before. Olivia had proven that no matter how much life tried to break her, she would always come out stronger. Her strength was her voice, her actions, her legacy, and she was going to make sure the world heard it. The camera pulled back, revealing the name etched in gleaming silver on the front of the towering building behind the auditorium, Hope Foundation. It was a monument to everything Olivia had fought for, a symbol of her journey, her survival, and her ultimate triumph over betrayal. The tower stood tall and unshakable, a permanent reminder to the world and to herself that no one could ever tear down what she had built on a foundation of truth and resilience. Hope wasn't just her daughter's name. It was the legacy she had created, a legacy of strength and compassion, one that no one could touch, no matter how hard they tried. And with that, Olivia's redemption was complete. Dear friend, in life, there are moments when the world tries to break us, moments so raw and cruel that we wonder if we will ever stand again. But as the Stoics teach us, true strength is not found in avoiding hardship. It is forged within it. The obstacle is the way. As Ryan Holiday, popularizer of Stoicism, often reminds us, echoing Marcus Aurelius, who once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And like Olivia, when life scatters the pieces of who we are, it also offers us the chance to rebuild stronger, wiser, and truer to ourselves than ever before. You're not defined by what tries to destroy you. You're defined by how you rise. So whatever you're facing today, hold on to hope. Breathe. Stand tight. And remember, you are stronger than you know, and your best chapters have yet to be written. Rise, rebuild, and shine. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button. Share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And subscribe to our channel for more inspiring journeys and powerful stories of resilience. Your support helps us continue bringing these narratives to life. Thank you for being part of our community.